Everyone feeling good? Hopefully. Some release of stress and emotions I've heard. Yeah. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll elaborate on a few points and maybe even take you through a little meditation process, vipassana, and then I can do the questions. So, to very briefly encapsulate what I've said so far, awareness modifies itself as the subject and object of experience. It does so in the form of sensation, feeling, pleasant or unpleasant, with all the variations. Right? Pleasant includes love, compassion, joy, happiness, equanimity. Unpleasant means anger, hostility, fear, guilt, shame, depression. But those are sophisticated forms of feeling. The rudimentary form of feeling is just pleasant or unpleasant. Pleasant if it seems I'm connected to what I'm feeling. Unpleasant means I'm not connected. This feeling is in a rudimentary form, present even in an amoeba, because if you feel connected, then you go for it. You're attracted to it, whether it's food or another person or whatever is in the environment. If you feel disconnected, then you move away from it. So in a rudimentary form, it's present in all sentient beings or all organisms. The next elaboration of this sensing and feeling is what we call perception. So perception is also a modification of awareness into an experience. And that perception can be the perception of a sound. It can be the perception of what we call hardness, softness, sensation again. It can be the perception of a form or a color or a shape. By the way, just remember, form, color and shape are the same thing. And when you're seeing, that's all you see. Afterwards, you create a construct. Construct means an idea. This is a flower, this is a body, this is a sofa. That's a construct. Raw experience is just sound, sensation, feeling, perception, color, shape, form, taste, smell, and then the interpretation of that, which is thought. And I mentioned already to you that we can summarize all this in the acronym SIFT: sensations, images, feelings, thoughts. That's the sum totality of all experience that we call mind, body, and universe. So even mind, body, and universe are constructs based on experience, and the experience itself is a modification of awareness. Modification means modified form. You can also say modulation, excitation, vibration, any word that seems okay for you. The perception is or at least is experienced as in time. But every moment of perception is a snapshot. But if the snapshots of perception are continuous or have a continuity, very fast, then it appears like this. Okay. Close your eyes and then open your eyes again. It's a new universe. It looks like the previous one because the change is very minuscule. But how do we even know if there's a change? You close your eyes and look at your body and you look at that, it seems the same. Like if I close my eyes and now open my eyes and look at my body and look at that, it seems the same. This looks the same, this looks the same, and that looks the same. But that's because the snapshots was in very rapid succession. This did not look the same 10 years ago. Right? And even the ocean did not look the same eons ago. So there's a minor, it's like a movie. When you see a movie, old-fashioned movie, 28 frames a second, you move the reel fast, you see a movie. But in between every frame, there's a gap, and every frame is different from the other frame. So too in a digital movie, there's 0 and 1 codes that go on, off in a certain sequence that gives us the experience of a song or the experience of a movie soon, hopefully. In the devices, you'll smell also a forest or whatever. But it still doesn't explain what they call the hard problem of consciousness. But nevertheless, all experience is a modification of awareness. As this and everything else. When you're seeing, the experience is only a shape or a form or a color, and all three are the same thing. The difference between one form and another form is just a color. So this afternoon I remembered that I had these slides and I'd kind of forgotten about them, but then I came here and asked Rene, can you find them? And he did. So that will make my job a little easier. Okay, so you can put the slide on. So what do you, I can't even ask you because you can't answer. That's all right. You can respond silently. Okay, so how many people see a woman sitting in front of a mirror and candles and so on? Okay. And how many people see a skull with teeth? So what's in front of you is a shape, a color. That's it. And the shape and the color is what we call seeing. It's an activity called seeing. And that activity is in your awareness. But when I say a woman sitting in front of a drawer, that's a construct. When I say skull, that's a construct. And you can, in fact, in consciousness, by changing the construct in consciousness, you can change the image that you experience. So this is also, in a sense, entanglement, right? The image, the construct, which is a thought, are entangled. You change the thought, you change the image. So both the image and the thought are modified forms of the same thing, which is awareness. The switch is only in awareness, not on the screen. Nothing happens on the screen. Ultimately, even the screen that you're seeing is a shape and a form, modified as an experience of yourself. Okay, so I'm sure if I say that there's a man there playing a bugle, how many people can experience that? And if I say there's a woman looking at you right now from the screen, how many people can experience that? The shift again is in consciousness. What's there is just a shape and a color and a form. The three are synonymous. You can see a face, right? And how many people can see the word liar? You change the construct and you change the perception. This is a very classic one. I'm sure you've seen, some of you have seen this before. So you see, if you want, you can see a young woman looking away from you. And you can also see an older woman. How many people can see the older woman? So you can either see the mother-in-law or you can see the daughter-in-law. Okay? And that construct is in consciousness. This is the same picture as the previous. Just a little. Can you switch from one to the other? As you switch the construct, you switch the perception. Now what I've been saying all along, the perception, the image, the feeling, the thought, they're entangled. You change one, you change all the others. So if you've had a bad experience with your mother-in-law, then that picture can create distress. Okay? Now in this case you have three perceptions, right? You have the mother-in-law, the daughter-in-law, and this time also the father-in-law with the mustache. That's of course classic. You can either see a rabbit or you can see a bird, right? These are more elaborate, amazing pictures. Don't have time to go into each of these, but basically shapes, colors and forms that become pictures in consciousness. Pictures in consciousness. The genius of people like Picasso et al., but they could see raw fundamental reality behind the image. Okay, that was evocative. So you see a woman, right, young lady, but you also see a flower and a bee. See the birds, you see the woman. See the face, see the horses. That's an amazing painting. Face, man, horse, someone sleeping by the wayside, and yet just a face. What's the world really like? What's the world really like? The answer is there is no world. Okay. There is no world. There's only experience, and there's awareness modifying itself as experience, and then constructing mind, body, and world. You are the creator. The divine in you is the creator. That's why in many of these wisdom traditions, the very act of experience is a divine act. The very act of experience. You can't speak right now, but how many people have heard of the hard problem of consciousness? Okay, so the hard problem of consciousness is there is no physical explanation for any experience. Because science tries to define it in terms of physical terms. It says, when I'm looking at Deepak on the stage, what's coming to my eyes are photons. Photons have no mass, no color. They strike your eyes, they create chemistry. The eyes send an electrical current to your brain. In the brain, there's an electrochemical reaction. And you see this world, you see me, you see this three-dimensional reality. That's called the hard problem of consciousness. So if I ask you now even to imagine a rose, imagine a sunset, imagine the ocean, there's an experience. But there's no picture in the brain, either of the physical world or of a mental image. There is no picture in the brain of a physical world or a mental image. Similarly, there's no sound in the brain. There's no noise in the brain is silent. Similarly, there's no fragrance or smells or anything, but this is what we call life, right? So there's no explanation, physical explanation, for any experience, including the experience of your own, what you call your body or your mind. No explanation. That's why it's called the hard problem. It's actually not just a hard problem, it's a very, very, very hard problem. Because there's no theory, there's no physical theory to explain experience. And all we have is experience. Our life is a continuum of experiences. The hard problem is easily solved if you say there's no physical reality, that the physical reality itself is an experience of sensations, images, feelings, thoughts, which we interpret as the physical world. You say, but this is hard, this is a hard object. What are you telling me? Okay. This is a material hard object. That's where you remember the famous argument, it's very famous if you followed philosophy. George Berkeley was the person, English philosopher, who basically created the whole notion of idealism. He said the world is not made of physical objects, it's ideas. Which went back to Plato actually, because Plato said the same thing. Plato in his Republic said the same thing. We call it Platonic ideas, but Berkeley said the same thing, that the world exists in consciousness or mind, as he called it. So there's a story that, one of his proteges was talking about that. I think his name was Wilberforce, and I forget the other guy's name right now. They had just come out of a sermon church lecture, and one said to the other, Samuel Johnson, and the other one was Wilberforce. So Wilberforce was, I think it was the name, but it doesn't matter. He was explaining this whole idea, and so the other person, Johnson, he hit his leg against a rock, and he said, "I refute you thus. I refute you thus." This is hard. And if you really believe that the world is full of ideas, then go go in front of a bus. Okay? I remember once somebody said to Maharishi, there's a story, that there's a Swami who knows everything about consciousness, and he's chased by a tiger and he climbs up a tree and because he's scared. And somebody said, the same idea as the refute you thus. And Maharishi said, dream tiger, dream tree, and dream Swami. They're all projections of consciousness. Hardness is not a quality of an object. Hardness is an experience. Softness is an experience. So just replace the word object with replace the word experience, and you've solved the hard problem. Replace the word objective reality with the word experiential reality, and then experience as a modification of consciousness. Why is this important? Well, because once you understand that consciousness is timeless and the experience is time-bound, you're free, you're done. It has to ultimately become such a living experience that all these constructs mean nothing. Birth, death, nothing. We don't need that. I guess we are done with the illustrations for now, right? And we can see the last slide. You can show it. So this is the world at large right now, inflamed, and this is where we are going on our journey, right? The universe gradually becomes subtle, 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 till it's all one undifferentiated consciousness, which is timeless, eternal, always modulating itself as knower, knowing and known.